Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion with debt, and we're here with Matthew Fogarty. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Kerry.
All right. Matthew, in your practice, you consider debt to be incredibly important, and I know that you spend a little bit of time with your clients around this. We've just been discussing all the different types of home loans. Could you give us an example maybe of somebody who's got their home loans wrong and how it's affected them?
Yeah, very good point, Kerry. We had one situation with one couple, and this actually happens a number of times, is people go down the road of early mortgage repayment schemes. And that's where they get into a scheme such as a line of credit. Now, the issue with a line of credit is it looks fantastic on the surface and you set it up. But the problem that happens is it doesn't allow for any strict budgeting. So what we've got is we've got people that have a line of credit, they build up their credit card, then they pay it off using their line of credit. After that is they don't keep an eye on it. And what happens slowly over a period of time, what we find is the line of credit slowly builds up and up and up and up, and the equity they have in their home actually starts to shrink. And they have this false sense of where the mortgage is going. It's actually going, they're actually going backwards. And before they know it, they've realised that their mortgage may have started at, say, $370,000, is now up to $400,000. And they've lost that equity, and they have a false sense of where their budget's at. So that's been one of the issues. What we normally do in that case is we sit down and we have a serious discussion about their cash flow, which I believe you've already talked about, Kerry. And secondly, restructure the loan and put a bit of discipline behind it. And I think that's always works really, really well.
The issue with flexibility is that you have to have the discipline to use it.
Yes, and that's it really, Kerry. It gets down to having the flexibility to be able to, flexibility, and I think there are loan products out there that allow you the flexibility, but it means you have to think before you actually spend, rather than endlessly going out and spend and get caught up in the trap of spending. So, the flexibility, and I think it just gets down to a bit of discipline, and I think as you've discussed previously in the programs, is keeping a budget and knowing what you spend. And that normally helps.
Last week we were talking about cash flow, and we spoke about a cash flow system.
Yes.
That had your clients been using, they probably wouldn't have fallen foul of.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of allocating money where it needs to flow.
Yeah.
Could you give us an example maybe of a client who had the right loan and how that worked for them?
Well, we've had one client in particular, and a young chap that came in, and we normally send some preparation documents out to the client, and they completed. He came in with a very, very comprehensive budget. He knew within how much he spends on a weekly basis. That gave us a fantastic basis to actually look at his loans to see that they were in place when we put the loans in place. And simply we set up a loan with a principal interest loan. And I think it's important to have a principal interest loan rather than going down the road of an interest only. Because really, with an interest only, all you're doing is paying the interest. At least with the principal, you're starting to pay down some principal. You're starting to build some equity in the asset. And I think that applies it. And we sometimes put an offset account against that where appropriate. So there'll be some money sitting in an account that will offset how much is in the loan. An example of that would be, say they have a loan for $200,000. And in that offset account, in this particular case, they had $20,000 there. Now that $20,000 offsets any interest that would accrue on the 200. So therefore, they're only paying interest on 180 as opposed to the 200. It works quite well. Also, they have access to the 20,000 to spend, and they can watch that 20,000 as opposed to the line of credit we talked about earlier, where it just becomes all one big pool. And that's worked really, really well. And we sit down and have some serious discussions with clients about that. The other one, those who aren't as disciplined, one thing we do is, we put it into redraw. We get them to pay off extra off their principal, which I'd probably say prudently is the better way. And what that means is they have that money available on redraw, but for them to get it on redraw, they seriously have to think about that decision, and we have a discussion about, are you going to buy the big screen TV? Is it against what plans you're planning for the future? And that's really, really good debt management. But essentially those clients that I've seen that have really good budget, they know where their money is going, like you've probably discussed in the previous program, they're a bit disciplined about their loan repayments, pay off that Visa card or that credit card and not let that get out of control. I think that really, really works really well. And interest only does have its place, and I believe that has its place in particularly investment properties, but still, you should be paying down that loan.
I remember a client once, we had organised all the debt and we had all their cash flow sorted out and everything was wonderful. Yeah. And they bought a new house and I popped out to see them.
Right.
And the gentleman was trying to steer me away from the lounge room.
Oh, okay.
I think you can guess why. There was
Yes.
a large screen TV in there.
Yes, yes.
And the wife said he didn't want you to see that
Right.
because it wasn't in the budget.
Yeah,
So clearly that was debt.
Yes.
And it shouldn't have been.
that's right.
Nothing wrong with a large screen TV.
Yes.
Just has to be in the budget.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right, Kerry. And I think, you know, it's nice to have the toys, but I think you really got to consider about the consequences of spending that money. Your long-term plans and objectives, is it going to jeopardise it? That may be one of your long-term plans and objectives. That's fantastic. But it's just impulsively going out there to one of the big retail stores and saying, oh, let's buy that screen. Oh, we've got the money available. Let's do it. We'll pay it back. Well, I know it becomes a revolving habit, and those habits become habits that are very, very difficult to change in the future.
Look, thank you very much for being with us on the show, Matthew.
That's okay.
You brought some really interesting insights in. Thank you. What we've learned with Matthew is a fair bit, truthfully. We're here talking about debt, but what we've actually discovered, we've discovered that goals are important. Well, I told you that. We've discovered that cash flow is important. Well, of course, we've mentioned that before. And what we're seeing through the show is that every heading we're working under, they're all important. They all mesh together. So Matthew's help has been absolutely important in helping us rediscover that. We'll see you after the break.